Artists and Wellbeing. Ria Hartley, Ecologies of Care artist. Ecologies of Care was initiated by artist Ria Hartley in 2018. The project comprises of a growing toolkit of resources designed to support artists who have access requirements to express their needs. Hartley speaks to Lydia Ashman about the toolkit and why artists' health and well-being should be a sector-wide priority. Founded in 2018 by artist Ria Hartley, Ecologies of Care aims to empower artists and arts workers who have access requirements to understand and articulate their needs. Hartley, who is neurodivergent, has first-hand experiences of the challenges that artists face when their access needs are not met in work contexts. Ecologies of Care was born out of Hartley's ongoing concern with how the industry can better prioritise and nurture artists and arts workers' health and well-being. At the heart of Ecologies of Care is a growing open-source toolkit, which Hartley is currently producing in collaboration with other artists. This will contain a range of resources designed to help artists to assess and communicate their needs so that their professional relationships and working conditions can be more supportive. Ecologies of Care is underpinned by the social model of disability. This asserts that barriers to access, be they attitudinal, organisational, or physical, are caused by the way that society is set up, rather than by an individual's impairment. The project is intended to stimulate lasting change across the arts sector so that it ultimately becomes more open and equal.
For a long time, I've wanted to understand how artists can work without harming themselves. Many of us seem to have recurring cycles of burnout or illness, or we are placed in positions where we are made to feel disempowered. What are the issues that are destabilising artists' health and well-being, and how does this affect those of us with disabilities and impairments, particularly invisible ones? I also question the assumptions made about artists' working practices when we are unable to achieve the expected standard. This usually involves meeting the standard of a neurotypical, able-bodied, white, straight man from a middle or upper-class background. I'm not white or a cisgendered straight man from a middle or upper-class background. I'm not neurotypical, and so therefore it's impossible for me to reach this patriarchal standard, and assimilating to this lessens the potential of creativity and innovation. But this expectation that we are all to perform in this way, I think, makes people quite unwell. I realised the industry needed to open up a care channel to support artists, rather than the antithesis, which is what I was finding. Power structures that were creating adversity for artists. In 2016, I was invited to present a keynote speech at Spill Symposium. The theme of the symposium was En Masse, which looked at the relationship between artist-led and institutional context, and between activists and mainstream approaches, questioning who has power and what should they do with it. All I could think about in terms of addressing our collectivity was attempting to shift the paradigm from a top-down hierarchy into a more holistic, equal community. Who are we in the room? What do we represent? And how can we come together as more of an ecosystem? I decided that my keynote would be a collective action that would bring everyone out of their seats and into the centre space. It began with me proposing my care to another, for that person to come to the stage with me, for us to embrace, then for two people to go and declare their care to another and continue the process. We duplicated that action like cells and formed something bigger than ourselves. It was probably the first time that day that everybody had seen and spoken to each other in a space all together. It was around that time that Ecologies of Care was being birthed. Each artist is very much their own unique fingerprint. With the Ecologies of Care Toolkit, I want to create a framework that will allow the needs of each artist to be seen, heard, and acknowledged. The first part of the toolkit is designed particularly for people with invisible impairments, because this is an area that is least understood, supported, or spoken about, yet highly common experiences for artists. Having an invisible impairment but not having your needs supported creates adversity. In the toolkit, there is an email signature and an email autoresponder template, which are disclaimers that state the user's invisible impairments. Artists have already told me that they're using them, and I really encourage them to do that and to test different ways of using them. The Access Awareness document was inspired by James Leadbitter's Disability Awareness document. This document is designed to define a person's barriers and access requirements and suggestions for reasonable adjustments to be made to respond to these. The full toolkit is going to be developed over a number of years. It will include a template for Julie Vulcan's self-care manual and for Alice Tatton Brown and Emily Williams' contracts of care. These are bespoke contracts which lay out exactly what your terms and conditions might be and what you need to do your best work. At the moment, Rachel Dobbs and I are working on a document to inform artists about how they can access to work, which is a government grant which supports disabled people in work, including self-employed work, because it's quite a daunting application process, and not many people know they can get this funding to support them with their impairments. We're also creating a template for the Access Awareness document so that artists can make their own version. I've been using resources from the toolkit for 6 months, and I've seen a massive shift. It's changed my working relationships, particularly with people who don't know anything about me. My Access Awareness document has opened up the intersections. I can state my invisible impairments, the things that I deal with every day as a black queer person and as a survivor of domestic violence. Things that are really difficult and stressful. I can state my triggers. I've been granted much more time and much more space. People are stretching out the budget or reducing the time involved with commissions, which means I'm working less and being paid more. People are also asking more questions. Is this going to work for you? We're thinking of helping you in this way. What do you think? There's much more clarity about where we stand and what we're responsible for. It makes me feel much safer as an artist, and it's given me a lot more energy and power. The Ecologies of Care Toolkit isn't exclusively for neurodiverse artists. All artists have precarious experiences when care, health, and well-being are the least considered areas of our working practices. I've witnessed people become ill and impaired through long-term stressful lifestyles. At this time within our capitalist society, the conversations around care and health and well-being are needed for everyone. Since launching Ecologies of Care, I've been contacted by artists with a variety of invisible impairments who have asked me to work with them. So I know there is a need for this to happen. I think we're coming to a time where Ecologies of Care can really manifest because it chimes with two things that are relevant to now: the social model of disability and the Equality Act 2010. To ensure the project can become sustained and work within the integrity of what Ecologies of Care proposes, the idea is to have a collective contribution of income that funds the open source Toolkit, creating an economy of care. At the moment, we're receiving just $32 a month through our Patreon, which is a crowdfunding subscription model, and we hope to inspire more of us in the industry to contribute. The next 12 months will be about sharing Ecologies of Care so that the dialogue travels more and more, and people become aware of the practice and start to take ownership of it. Ecologies of Care is like a snowball. It will gain momentum as it rolls down the hill. We're just at the beginning.